Hey people, I've now got the cylinder head back from the machine shop. We've got all our gaskets and bolts arrived, so let's start putting this back together. Okay, so the head's come back from the machine shop. They've skimmed the surface for me. They've also pressure tested it, and they've also vacuum tested the valves. So they put a bit of pressure on there, checking for cracks and things like that. And then they also vacuum on these ports here just to check that these valves are still seated. Now you could go to the expense of fully reconditioning this, which would be taking all the valves out, reseating them, definitely cleaning it all up. Look, in this case, these valves are still okay. They're seating okay, they're sealing okay. So we're just doing the cheaper option, which is just skimming the head. We've also got here, all of our gaskets have arrived. So obviously a head gasket, a couple of manifold gaskets, some seals, etc., etc. There is the valve stem seals here. I'm not going to actually use them. I'm just going to keep the existing ones on the car. And we've also got a set of new bolts. Now, before we can put this on the block, we need to clean some things up. So let's duck under the bonnet. Okay, a couple of different ways to clean this up here. I could just spray a little bit of sort of degreaser or cleaner on there. Get like a Scotch-Brite pad and carefully just run around. Look, obviously doing this is not really going to affect the surface of the aluminium. You're really not going to sort of gouge it out, but we definitely want to get all of this remnants of the old gasket. Look, what I typically use, it's one of these. It's a, let's see if it's got a name on it, 3M roll-lock bristle disc. This is the white one. They come in different colours. The white one, they say, is for removing gaskets off these sorts of aluminium surfaces. I've been pretty brutal with these, and it really doesn't affect the aluminium at all. So let's give this a whirl and see if we can clean it up quickly. Okay, so after a few minutes with that, I'm just going to wipe it clean and have a closer look. Look, it does seem a bit of a brutal way to do it, but it doesn't take any surface off the aluminium. But looking at this, it's one of the quickest and easiest ways to do it. I can still see a few spots that I've missed. I'll just get them with a little Scotch-Brite. Spend the time just to make sure that you're super happy that it's as clean as possible. Hey, now if yours has overheated really quite badly, it is likely that this deck surface has been warped and the block is warped, in which case you're going to have to go a little bit further than what I'm doing here than just giving it a good clean. You're going to have to pull it all apart and take it down and get it properly decked. But I'm fairly happy with how this one is. And I think I'm not going to get too much more old gasket material off. There is a little bit of discoloration in parts. That's not really bothering me at all. Just want to make sure the old gasket is removed. If you do get a particularly stubborn piece, you can get a blade, but you want to keep it really flat and just sort of scrape it along. It's just so easy to gouge out the surface. But it's usually one of my go-tos is a blade. There's a couple spots there that that bristle disc just didn't move. Now look, any comments, tips, questions about what I'm doing, particularly with this stage, please put them down below. It's always a bit controversial on how you clean these up because whatever I'm doing here is, it's not 100%. It's going to be good and we need to do something, but I don't want to pull the whole engine out. So I am compromised to some degree. And yes, there will be little parts and particles that are flicked. So I can try and clean that up the best I can. Some of it may have gone in here, some of it may have gone in there. Look, you can't have an omelette without cracking some eggs. unless you're going to pull this engine out and fully rebuild it, we're just going to have to live with it. It looks like we've still got a little bit of coolant in here, so I might just put a rag over it just to stop too much blowback. Before I go much further as well, I want to check out all these bolt holes, so I am just going to blow them out initially. Now let's just wipe all this up and see what we got. So this is pretty well what you're going to get the surface to look like. I'm pretty happy with what that's looking like. Maybe just a little bit on there. Nah, we're happy with that. Next thing I'm going to do is I've got one of my new bolts here, and notice it is the hex style. I'm just going to run a bolt down into each of these just to make sure that the threads are clear and there's nothing binding them. All the way in, all the way out. You might notice when it comes out, it might be a little bit oily. It might still have some cleaning up in that hole. But what I want is just to make sure that when I start torquing these up, there's no false reading because the bolts are binding up in any way. And the last one. Okay, so with that bolt run through all of those, I'm now confident that when I do torque these up, that there's no false readings here or there's nothing binding or anything like that, because you've got to do these pretty tight and sometimes they creak and groan a bit and you start to worry. But now that I've cleaned those bolt holes, I'm happy with that. Just going to cover this over. I should have done this earlier. It looks pretty good, but I just want to make sure that the surface of this manifold is clean. It's all good. Hey, while we're cleaning up some surfaces here, I'm going to start just cleaning up this surface. It's going to be easier now than when we have the cylinder head in place. So I'll pull this engine mount back out. It's supported underneath, so I don't have any issues there, and we'll clean up this surface. This bolt out. Take two, we'll get this out of our way. Now just looking at this surface here, look, there is this little bit of gasket here that I can just kind of peel away. And then this is just a completely flat surface. And again, I'm just going to use a brass brush, and I just want to be careful that stuff doesn't go back into the head that we've just cleaned. I'll probably spend 30-40 seconds just going around, tidying up. It feels like a lot longer, but it's really not long at all. Okay, after a minute or so of doing this, it should be looking pretty good. I just don't want a big gunk of old silicone preventing it from sealing up nice. Also, I want it to look neat when it's done as well. There's nothing worse than when you see big globs of silicone where someone just hasn't spent the time to clean it up and just put the right amount on. Okay, with this one fairly clean now, look, we don't need it cleaned straight away to put the head on anyway, but it will just make it easier later on. So that's all ready to go. So at this point here, I just want to double check that everything's nice and clean up in and around here. And I'm going to run a bead of silicone up and along around here. And when the cylinder head comes down, it just presses up against there. Now you do have the concern of when you put the cylinder head in, they're just kind of swiping it off, so you just need to be careful. Also, we're going to put a little bit of silicone around here. There's just a bolt hole that goes through here, but if you don't silicone that up, you'll get oil that seeps out of that bolt hole, causing you a leak, which is not much fun. And here is where a O-ring sits. So we'll go show you that O-ring on the cylinder head now and what I'm going to do to prep that up.